In the late 1600s, in the dense pine-choked valleys between Germany and Poland, there was a small village named Edelbach. The villagers were deeply religious, but also quietly terrified of the old Nordic rites their ancestors once practiced. Among them lived a young woman named Hannelore Weiss, who was gentle, educated, and known for her angelic singing of the church psalms. She was loved by many, but envied by one powerful man, Pastor Friedrich Adler, a stern preacher who saw Hannelore's influence as a threat to his authority. When a wealthy merchant visiting the village fell in love with Hannelore instead of the pastor's daughter, envy turned to hatred. Rumors were spread, lies were whispered, and within weeks, Hannelore was accused of witchcraft, not for cursing, but for being too loved, too admired. She was seized, chained, and forced to confess. She maintained her innocence. She sang psalms instead of screaming during the trials. And so they burned her. But here is where the story changes. As the flames rose, Hannelore did not scream. She sang, a psalm that no priest had heard before. Some villagers swore that her voice split into 3 tones, like 3 women singing at once. Some swore the sky turned the color of dried blood. Some swore her eyes glowed white. Before her final breath, she said, "Not in death, but in memory. I will return through the mouths that repeat your song. Repeat your song." The morning after Hannelore's execution, Edelbach was quiet in a way that villages are never quiet. No chickens clucked, no dogs barked. Even the wind avoided the burnt pyre at the center of the square, as though afraid to stir the ashes. But the villagers noticed something more unsettling. The church bell rope was swaying gently, though no one touched it, and the bell itself did not make a sound. At first, the people told themselves that the silence was simply grief. Guilt, shame, but guilt doesn't tap on windows. Shame doesn't sing. Ving. It began with the midwife who had stood closest to the pyre. She had been the one who pressed Hannelore's hair into a knot before the execution, ensuring it would burn slowly. The midwife woke during the deep hours of night, hearing what sounded like someone humming directly beside her ear. A slow, lilting melody, a hymn, familiar yet wrong, stretched, distorted like it was being sung through water. She tried to scream. She could not. Her voice was gone, completely. The next morning, her husband found her sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, lips blue from trying to force words out. The doctor came. The priest came. They blamed illness, demonic influence, the devil, anything but the truth. 3 days later, she vanished. Her door was still locked from the inside. The sheets were undisturbed. Only a thin smear of blood along the window latch remained. Others followed. The blacksmith, who had forged the chains for Hannelore, awoke to find his workshop tools arranged in a perfect circle around him. He did not remember falling asleep there. When he reached for his hammer, he felt the handle was warm, like someone had been holding it tightly. By sundown, he was missing too. His blood was found under the church pew, a long streak trailing toward the altar. But the most disturbing change came to Pastor Friedrich. He began hearing the psalm in broad daylight, the same psalm Hannelore sang in the flames. It echoed from the rafters, though no birds perched there. It echoed from the cemetery, though no mourners stood among the stones. It echoed inside his skull, pulsing like a heartbeat. And then his sight began to fade, not suddenly, slowly, cruelly. The outlines of people dissolved first, then colors. Then the world turned to fog, and he could see only shapes. Finally, one morning, he awoke to complete darkness. But even in blindness, he could still see her, not with eyes, but behind them. The villagers said the pastor began whispering to someone no one else could see. They heard him crying softly inside the church at night. Sometimes they heard laughter too, but not his voice, a woman's voice, singing, comforting, mocking. When his daughter hung herself in the bell tower, no one climbed the stairs to bring her down. The bell rang on its own, 13 slow, hollow tolls, though the rope was found cut clean in half, and every villager who heard those 13 tolls knew Hannelore had returned, not as a ghost, but as an unanswered promise, a memory sharper than death, a voice that refused to be silenced. And a curse that had only just begun. For nearly 300 years, Edelbach remained abandoned. The forest swallowed the homes. Tree roots pulled apart the chapel stones, and the once beloved bell tower stood crooked like a broken tooth against the sky. Travelers avoided the valley entirely. Locals whispered that voices could be heard if you crossed the old bridge at dusk, a woman singing a hymn no church had ever claimed. Yet time has a habit of burying the past. Names fade, records are lost, and eventually the melody survived while the memory did not. In 1979, across the Atlantic in rural Pennsylvania, a small Lutheran church prepared for their Easter services. Their choir director, Margaret Keene, was a gentle woman known for collecting historical hymnals. She had a fascination with forgotten music, songs written by composers whose names had been erased by time. One winter afternoon, she purchased an unmarked hymnal from a withdrawn library sale. A thick, dust-coated book bound in leather, its pages unevenly hand-copied. No publishing date, no catalog stamp, only a title handwritten on the first page, Lieder des Schweigens, Songs of Silence. She found most of the music disjointed, incomplete, or strangely phrased. But one piece stood out, haunting, beautiful, and unlike anything she'd heard. Psalm 13, composer, unlisted. It was written in a minor key that seemed to bend and lean, like the notes were reaching for something that wasn't there. Margaret felt drawn to it, almost compelled. She transcribed it neatly for the choir, arranged harmonies, and introduced it at the next rehearsal. The choir members found it eerie but captivating. When they sang it, the sound filled the church in a way that made the air feel thick, like warm smoke. Some said it felt like there was a third voice singing with them. Some said it felt like someone was standing right behind them, breathing softly. No one spoke of it aloud. On Easter Sunday, the church was full, families, children, elderly townfolk. The choir began to sing Psalm 13, and something changed in the room. The lights dimmed, though no one touched them. The air turned cold. Cold. Every candle flickered in the same direction, as if listening. One woman in the audience began to cry, whispering that she recognized the tune, but she could not explain how. That night, the youngest choir member, 8-year-old Clara, awoke standing in the hallway outside her parents' bedroom. Her hand was pressed against the wood. Her face was pale, expression blank. She was whispering, "She knows me now. She knows we called her." The next morning, Clara could not speak. Her voice was gone, just like the villagers of Edelbach. 2 boys claimed they had heard someone singing under their bed. A teenage choir girl scratched 13 lines into her bedroom wall while sleepwalking, and Margaret, the choir director, was found sitting in her living room at 4 a.m., staring at the open hymnal, her fingers frozen on the piano keys. The house around her had burned to ash, yet she was untouched, sitting upright, smiling faintly. The only object left unburned was the sheet music for Psalm 13. Experts later traced the melody back to Edelbach and to the trial record of Hannelore, Weiss. And from that moment, one truth became undeniable. The curse was not tied to a place, it was tied to the song, and anyone who sings it invites her back. They say a curse only has power if you believe in it, but this one only needs you to listen, because Hannelore does not knock. She does not appear in mirrors or shadows or corners of rooms. She waits in memory. She waits in memory. She waits in silence. She waits for the one moment. Your mind is quiet enough to hear her song again. If you ever catch yourself humming a tune you don't remember learning, if you wake in the night to a sound that's not quite music, but not quite breathing either, if you feel a presence standing just behind you when the room is still, do not turn around, do not speak, do not say her name. For those who answer her, for those who recognize the melody, are the ones she believes have called her back. And Hannelore does not visit to be remembered. She visits to be finished, to take one more voice, to finish one more verse of the song interrupted by fire. So if tonight the air feels heavy, if you hear a woman humming where no woman should be, just remember, silence is your only protection, because once she sings your name, you are already hers.